I'm so damn irritated, man. I had this whole plan. I had all my notes written out for this episode. And then I go on Twitter this morning and I see the god Kanye West blessed us with a tweet that said something to the effect of, "Hey guys, I'm releasing a new music video today. So go listen to that." But he didn't give a time. He just said today, and knowing Kanye, it might not even come out today. So I'm recording this now, and I might, if it comes out in good time, kind of record my reaction and cut that in later. But for now, we're just going to stick to the original schedule. But just know that I'm very irritated that I'm not listening to new Kanye right now. But maybe we'll make up for it later. Alright, so today is the first episode of New Music Mondays. So today what we're going to be doing is I'm going to talk about two albums that I thought were really interesting this weekend. That came out on Friday. One being Introspection by Umi, and the other one being Six Piece Hot EP by Black. Both of them are R&B albums just by chance. And then I will also cover two singles that dropped. One on Friday and then one dropped, I believe on Wednesday, I think, was Jack Harlow's single, which I'll talk about briefly. And for the albums, I'm just going to kind of give a really brief overview of like what the album's about, what I liked about it, and then why I think that they were interesting, each one. So to start off, I'm going to start off with Umi's Introspection. Again, I talked about this on my first podcast. Umi spelled U-M-I. From what I understand, she's a relatively new R&B artist. And I believe she doesn't have an actual album out yet. This is an EP. And she has an EP, I believe, that came out in 2019 or 2018 that I have yet to listen to. But after this album, I'm definitely going to go back to it. But this EP is 6 songs long and a total to 15 minutes. So it's really short, which I love. One thing that I'll talk about a lot, and I think I briefly touched on, on my first podcast, that I love concise albums. I like albums that kind of give their message, make their content known, and then just get out of the way. Like, they don't drag on, they don't overstay their welcome. And both of these albums are actually EPs, so they both earn a lot of points in that right. Starting off again with Introspection by Umi. This is an R&B album, like I said before. Most songs, this is a pretty standard R&B album in terms of content. A lot of songs are about her self-reflection, including relationships, self-worth, and things of that sort. So nothing groundbreaking in terms of content. However, I will say some of the instrumentals that were on a couple of the songs were really interesting, which really caught my ear and actually interested me into her other works. Some of the highlights, again, there are only 6 songs on this album, so most of them were good. I liked all 6 of them, but 5 of them I really, really, really liked. The 5 being Introspection, The Introduction, Open Up, Where I Wonder, Pretty Girl High, and Broken Bottle. Introspection, Open Up, and Where I Wonder are all really similar in terms of content and essentially the same things. I like the same things about all 3 of them. They're all kind of similar in terms of sound, and again in terms of content. One of those first 3 songs, I would say probably make up my favorites on the album. And again, like, they're pretty basic. What I really love about this album in terms of the songs, which I'll talk a little bit about later, is that they're not very complex. They're not very long. Obviously, there are 6 songs in a 15-minute album, so they can't be very long. But they're not very complicated to like look into. Obviously, the message is pretty clear, straight up. And so what that does is you can really focus on her voice and the instrumental, which are both very beautiful. So that I really appreciate. Going on to Pretty Girl High, it was interesting. Most of the songs, 5 out of the 6 songs, were relatively slow in terms of tempo, in terms of tempo, and in terms of just like how she's delivering her voice. They're very slow. They're very sultry. Maybe not sultry is the right word, but again, they're slower. Pretty Girl High, on the other hand, is more upbeat than the others, and it's the 5th song in the album, I believe. So it's a really kind of, if you're just listening through it just straight through, it's a really interesting change because you're kind of like not lulled to sleep, but you're kind of in like a more relaxed mood when you're listening to the first 4 songs, and all of a sudden it just kind of picks back up. It's a really great song in that aspect, and it really in a 50-minute album, it does a good job of switching up and making you feel like you're not listening to the same song over and over again, which I really appreciated. And then Broken Bottle, which is the last song on the album, I think it's not necessarily my favorite, but it stood out the most to me because it definitely had the most interesting instrumental on the album, and her vocal performance was very different. There were a lot of effects on it. It sounded more like what in my notes I have, it sounded like what a non-radio, like a deep cut Rihanna sing-songy ballad would sound like. And obviously she's not Rihanna, but the tone and like the kind of effects that are put on her voice and the kind of the structure of the sound, while shorter than anything that I think that Rihanna would do, is really reminiscent of I could hear Rihanna doing this song. I could hear Rihanna saying these words in this tone at this tempo, and it sounds really good. Obviously, I'm a pretty big Rihanna fan. We need a new Rihanna album. 2020 really needs good things, and a Rihanna album would be a great thing. A little side note there. And then again, so going back to why I think this album is worth listening to, I said it before, the songs are really short and simple. The verses, they're only like maybe 1 or 2 verses, and then just like the chorus on each song, the chorus like 1 or 2 times. And the chorus takes up most of the songs, but all the choruses are really, I'll say, vibrant, and they're very interesting to listen to. They don't bore you. The instrumentals are kind of carry it a lot, and the instrumentals are really open. They're not very involved for the most part, with the exception of Broken Bottle, which again leads to Umi being able to, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Umi being able to really shine on her vocals, which I think are great and really carry the album, the EP, for the most part. And then another reason is, as I said before, again, it doesn't overstay its welcome whatsoever. Each song, the content of the song is very, very clear from the very beginning. The lyrics aren't very complex. They're straight to the point, and then they get their message in, they get out, it's done. Which, in terms of a 6-song EP, works really well, because it doesn't have to be restrained by the kind of sounds and the kind of organization that like a concept album would be held back by, where like every song needs to be like contributing to like some kind of narrative or something like that, or like story within the album. EPs don't necessarily have to do that, so they can really benefit from just being their own individual little chapters that don't really have a story to follow along with, if that makes sense. They're all like their own kind of really short, really short stories, and it works really well, especially in an album like this, for a person who's really new, to show off a lot of different ideas and a lot of different ways that she can shine on an album. It works really well. And yeah, so that was Introspection by Umi. Go check it out. I'll say out of the 2 albums that I'm going to be talking about today, it was my favorite by far. I found myself going back to it a lot, in a lot of different moods too. Like some of the songs you can listen to just at night, you can listen to while doing work, you can listen to it in the car. It's great. Okay, and the second album that I will be talking about today is called 6-Piece Hot EP by Black, again spelled 6-lack. If you're not familiar with Black, he is an R&B / rapper duo. I shouldn't say a duo. He does both. It's a single person, but he does both rapping and R&B. So you could compare him to Drake in that aspect, but that's really where the similarities start and end. It's really him he's an R&B artist that can rap for the most part. And the R&B, the sound is a little bit darker. This is an EP again, and this is coming off of 2 albums that he had previously, one of them being Free Black, which is an amazing R&B album, an absolutely amazing R&B album, and if I'm not mistaken, is the first album that Apple Music promoted on Apple Music when it was originally created in, I can't remember what year, it's been too long, but I think Black was the first up next artist that Apple promos every once in a while, which is really interesting. But yeah, Free Black, go check that out. That album's really fantastic. And then his second album, East Atlanta Love Letter, came out, I believe, 2 years ago, summer 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And I wasn't a big fan of that. It kind of leaned away from the kind of sound that he had on Free Black, which I didn't really appreciate that much. It wasn't really that novel to me, the sound that he had in that album. Excuse me. But it was still decent. I don't think I have any songs in my rotation from the album anymore. But if you like Six Lack, if you end up listening to his music and you like him, definitely go check it out because you might like it more than I do. Okay, again, this is another EP, so another 6 songs across 18 minutes. Again, another very short listen. There are 2 features on the album. There's only one that's noted, and that's Lil Baby on Know My Rights. And then there's what I would call a sneaky feature, which is Ari Lennox from Dreamville. From the Dreamville label. If you're not familiar with Ari Lennox, she's a really, I would say, up-and-coming higher tier of R&B singer. I'm not a big fan of her personally. I find her voice to be very annoying and kind of whiny, but her song structure is great. All the instrumentals she picks are great. Her breakout album, Shea Butter Baby, came out, I believe, last year, and it made a lot of waves in terms of just like the R&B sphere, and then obviously she's a part of Dreamville, so that's J. Cole's label. So she has a lot of clout from that, which she kind of rode. But she's been kind of sneaking on a lot of different projects after that album. And I haven't really heard anything from her that made me change my mind about her yet. But I will say that her sneaky little feature on this album, she doesn't have a verse or anything like that. She doesn't have a chorus, but she kind of has added vocals, which again makes her feature very sneaky. She's not credited on the track listing, but her vocals, you can hear her vocals on a lot of on the chorus, and then again she's part of the intro, and then some other small bits in the album, or on the song, and she's on Long Nights again. So 6-piece Hot EP is, as I said before, it's a little bit of a darker R&B / hip-hop EP that covers, just typical R&B, like male R&B rapper stuff, upbringing / childhood, his current balance between his family, especially his daughter, who he calls out, I believe, especially on the intro, and like the balance between his family and his career, and then women, because those are essentially the great trifecta of all R&B, all male R&B / all rap, and then there's money that can fit into there sometimes. But that's just kind of a general gist of the content that's on this EP. Again, it's on album, so it doesn't really follow any kind of central narrative or central storyline. So each song just kind of gets in and gets out. And they're all relatively different in terms of content, even though, again, they all kind of stay to the same general tropes of an R&B / hip-hop song that you would find, especially over the darker sounds and instrumentals that are on it. Some of the highlights, out of the 6 songs, they were all very good, even though I would say that I would probably only be coming back to 2 or 3 of them consistently, because some of them are just more notable than the others. Out of the 6, the ones that I have as highlights are Long Nights, Know My Rights, and Elephant in the Room. Long Nights, the notes I have on it are that Ari's, again, like I said, Ari Lennox is on this one. She's the feature artist on this song. And her vocals are very good. They're very welcome. As much as I'm not a fan of them, she's pitched, and her voice is pitched, and it's kind of put into the song in a way that it doesn't actually make any, it's not very prominent, but it does add to it just as any additional vocals would. It's a good little change. It's a good little change from 6 Lack. I'm going to keep calling 6 Lack as a joke, but from Black's voice on a lot of choruses and a lot of the parts on the album in general. And then, of course, as soon as you turn the song on, the most prominent part of it is the goddamn saxophone in the beginning, and there are in with every genre of music that I listen to, there are little like instrumental choices that will kind of get me hooked onto a song almost every single time. And in terms of R&B songs, a saxophone will do that for me. A saxophone and like an acoustic guitar, just like a poorly tuned strum on an acoustic guitar. Those things, and then the piano sometimes. But those two, especially the acoustic guitar and definitely a saxophone, will just, if I hear that on a song, I'm going to add that to my library almost instantly. You can probably do anything. You could just yell on the song if you really wanted to, and I would still like it. But it does a lot. I say all that to say that the instrumental is really good on that song, especially. It really keeps you hooked from the beginning, and it kind of carries the song a lot through. That's kind of a lot of my notes, a lot of the highlights on this album kind of come from the instrumentals. Again, R&B is weird where I kind of get carried, or my personal opinion on R&B is that it kind of gets carried either A, by the vocal performance of the artist, and then the instrumental. And I mean, you can kind of apply that to any kind of piece of music, but in R&B especially, considering the instrumentals are kind of all slower, it's easy for an R&B song to sound just like another one, not only on the same piece of music, but within the same artist, within the same kind of sphere of R&B. It's very easy to sound similar to another thing. So when an instrumental sounds different and it sounds good, I take that into account, and it gets a lot of points in my book for being different and being interesting in terms of R&B instrumental. And again, the vocal performance is very reliant on the artist himself, so that's kind of an artist by artist basis. You can have an R&B artist like, I'll talk about Sabrina Claudio, I'll talk about SZA, whose voices I love, I adore. I will basically listen to them say anything. I could just hear them really talk over nothing for a while. Honestly, I just like their voices that much. So in that aspect, some artists have more of an advantage, at least in terms of my playback, than others in that aspect. But the instrumental, if the vocals are lacking, like I like Black's voice, I like his singing, even though it might be a little bit weird sometimes, and I do like his rapping. It's pretty normal rapping for someone who would consider themselves an R&B singer and a rapper. It's pretty normal. So in terms of projects like this, I really lean heavily onto the instrumentals. And that goes especially for the song Elephant in the Room, which is my favorite song on the album. Again, mostly because the instrumental is weird. It is like super, super, super weird. It's hard to describe. You would literally just have to go listen to it to understand what I'm saying. And as soon as the song cuts on, you're gonna understand what I mean when it's weird. And you can have a weird instrumental and not know what to do with it. I can't think of an example off the top of my head where that's the case, where an artist doesn't really ride on a really crazy beat that well. Usually they're pretty good about that. But in this case, Black's best vocal performance, in my opinion, is also on this song. And again, it might just be pretty normal if you put it on just any other beat, but when you put it on the instrumental, that's just weird, and that's this weird and all over the place. It really shines, and it really shows that he's very multifaceted, and he knows how to A, pick a beat, and B, how to adapt his delivery to really attend to that beat, and I really appreciate that. So that's easily my favorite song on the album by far. And I think when I was looking at Twitter when it first came out on Friday night, I believe that's probably the one that a lot of people like the most. So, for good reason. Another song that I had a good note about was Know My Rights, which was the song that featured Lil Baby. And what I will say about Lil Baby is I'm not the biggest fan of him or the music that he necessarily makes. However, I've listened to a lot of his later stuff, especially his features, and he's growing on me a good bit. I don't know if it's just that I'm tired of hearing him over just like typical trap beats that he usually raps over on his own projects, or what it is. But his verse here is absolutely fantastic. His flow fits the instrumental really well. It's his normal flow, but I guess I should say the instrumental fits his flow very well. And Black really kind of notices that, because Black does like a bit of a Lil Baby flow impersonation during his verse at the very beginning of the song. And again, it's the same rapper verse, women, money, whatever. So the content isn't anything special, mind you, but it is good to listen to in the background. You don't have to listen to it for any kind of message. It's not that deep. But it still sounds very good, and in terms of what I expected from this project, it kind of fits into my expectations. So I really appreciate that. Again, that was Know My Rights. Yeah. And then the last song that I had a note about, and it's not necessarily because it's great. This might actually be my least favorite song on the album, but it's the outro, and it's called Outside. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because it's a great example of the phenomenon that I'm seeing, or that rather I'm hearing now in music, which is, and I'm sure a lot of people can hear it too, and it was definitely expected, especially when this whole thing started, but I am so tired of the quarantine, of the COVID, of the quarantine bars, I mean, I get it. It's insanely relevant. Obviously, it's affecting everybody. So I don't necessarily hate that people are kind of giving into it. I just hate that I hear it all the time, and it's annoying, and it's very, it's very played out. It's not very inventive. I guess that's the reason why I don't like it that much, because it's like low hanging fruit. It's like, okay, great, like there's something going on in the world that everybody has to deal with. People are gonna rap, people are gonna sing about it, rap about it, whatever. But you could at least be creative with how you deliver it. And for the big example that Nicki Minaj's last verse on her 6ix9ine song, that came out a couple weeks ago, is a good example of that. She has just like one COVID or quarantine bar that I just hate, because you can hear it coming, and it's just like, all right, great. I didn't really, I could have written that myself. That's what I found annoying. And this song is a relatively not the worst offender of this phenomenon, but I have the actual quote written here. I have the bar written here because it's very funny. But the line goes, "Might give you the time of your life. Just wait till we can go outside. It's been a while. We've been locked in." And he continues on to sing and croon about whatever he's gonna do when they get out of lockdown. And again, it's not the worst offender, because it's just kind of, it's fine. You can switch the words. You can switch some of the words around, and it just kind of have it fit into like any other scenario you could have it fit into a song 2 years ago. So it's not terrible, but I found it funny as I looked at the song title, as I looked at the track list, and I looked at the song title. I was like, I swear to God, I thought it was just going to be like a bar. Like, I thought it was just going to be like a very small part of the song being like some quarantine-esque content. But the whole song is literally based around it. About just like, hey, I can't wait to see when we get out of quarantine. And again, it's not inherently bad, but it's just very played out and it's very predictable, which makes it not that enjoyable for me, especially because the song itself doesn't sound great compared to the other ones, in my opinion. It's just kind of riding that kind of, hey, I can relate to this. Like, I can't wait to see my significant other or this person that I'm talking to, or that I'm talking to but haven't seen in person yet because we're in quarantine and I can't travel and all this stuff. Like, it's very riding that sentiment, which is, again, very low-hanging fruit and kind of cheap in terms of content. Personally, I think so. So it was just kind of disappointing to see that on a 6-song EP for 1/6 of the content to be about, quarantine, which is whatever. It's not a bad song by any means, but it's very regular. It's very okay. It doesn't shine as much as it could have with any other content. And those are the highlights, or at least my talking pieces for those. So the actual songs that I would recommend if you were going to listen to any three would be Long Nights, Know My Rights, and then Elephant in the Room is my favorite. So if you were going to pick one, go to Elephant in the Room. Don't go to Outside, please, unless you want to just hear some odd, normal, run-of-the-mill quarantine lines. However, I will say the EP as a whole is worth listening to. Not necessarily if you're in the mood for like any kind of like deeper meaning behind. If you're looking for like meaning in music, this is not a good album for that. It's very good. Black makes very good, just long car ride, night drive music that you can just kind of put in the background and just kind of. I have it as vibe music. There's nothing too complex about the songs, but the instrumentals are good. The vocals are good. Excuse me again. So it's worth listening to at least once, I would say. But if you don't come back to it, it's not that important. It's not that significant to come back to, if that makes sense. But still, again, worth listening to. And yeah, so those were the two albums that I wanted to talk about. As I was writing this down, I realized that I didn't miss an entire August Alsina project. I'm not sure if anyone knows who August Alsina is, but if you don't, he's essentially a less poppy Chris Brown without the assault charges. And that isn't necessarily a joke about assault, because assault is very serious, and it's not a joking matter, but it's more a joke about how Chris Brown would be a lot more popular if he wasn't just an asshole human being. And August Alsina is just a less talented version of that. So if August Alsina was more talented, he would essentially be Chris Brown if Chris Brown wasn't Chris Brown, if that makes sense. And I picked Chris Brown especially in this case because the whole album is like 27 songs. And if you've even been slightly following Chris Brown or like pop R&B for the last few years, Chris Brown's last two albums have been like 35 plus song albums, which is terrible, which is craziness, and absolutely unnecessary. And I hate it. I hate it a lot. I love Chris Brown's music so much. I don't need to listen to 2.5 hours worth of music in one sitting on one piece of work. It doesn't make any sense. However, it's Chris Brown, so I'm going to listen to it. And there are great songs on those albums. That being said, that same reason is why I kind of skip this August Alsina album, because I like August Alsina. He has a really nice voice. He makes really good R&B music. But like, I'm just not in the mood to listen to 27 songs of August Alsina. At least not I'm not running to it. So if I get to it at some point, maybe I'll talk about it. Probably not, because I don't think August Alsina is really that prominent of an artist, and I don't think he's really special enough as an R&B artist, personally, to really kind of big him up and to put people onto him, if that makes sense. So, I don't know. If I'm just really bored one day, maybe I'll listen to the album, and then if it's amazing, then I'll talk about it. If it's not, then whatever, I'll just let it ride. But if you like R&B, if you know who August Alsina is, and you kind of missed his release, go check it out. Lord knows I won't be checking it out anytime soon, but we'll see. Okay, so those are the albums I want to talk about from Friday. So that just leaves the singles. And what I do, just a little background for what I do every week, is Thursday night at midnight, I go onto Spotify and I refresh the page. What I usually do is, if there's an album that I'm looking forward to, then I'll listen to that album in full, and then I'll listen to some singles that dropped through like their new music playlist that Spotify puts together at midnight every Friday, or every Thursday, every Friday. And then I'll do that, and then I'll go and see what other albums are out, and I'll listen to those if anything catches my eye. So again, that kind of reflects here why I start with albums and then go to singles. But I'm not going to spend too much time on singles, because again, they're just single songs, and there are only two of them this week that I really found interesting enough to talk about, or that I found interesting enough to listen to even. And the first one is Girls in the Hood by Meg Thee Stallion. And I assume if you're listening to this, you have some interest in music, so you should probably know who Meg Thee Stallion is by now. If you don't, check her out. She's a really, really, really good rapper from Houston. She's probably my favorite rapper right now, since Nicki Minaj got demoted a few years ago with that really trash-ass album that she put out. And then she still has not even come close to redeeming herself, and she probably never will. But Nicki Minaj mini rant out of the way. Meg Thee Stallion, really good rapper. Her content is very one-dimensional for the most part, at least so far. She hasn't released like a formal album yet. Her last project was what she called a mixtape, even though it was kind of length like an album. but there wasn't any. It was just at the end of the day, it was essentially just a collection of singles or just single songs that lived within each other. But it was really good. I liked that a lot. That came out last summer, I believe, and it was really good. So if you're into rap music, if you're into, again, her content, I'll say is very it's like, I don't want to say it's twerk music because that's kind of condescending and not really super accurate to it, but it's Houston rap, if you have any idea what kind of tone that sets in terms of rap music. But it's very like strip club friendly. It's very, like girl power, girl sexuality power, which is awesome. One thing that I'll again talk more about in following podcasts is that is one of my favorite kinds of music to listen to, because it is so damn fun to listen to. Just women just embrace everything that women are, just in all their greatness, and it's very fun to listen to because it's not very often that you get to hear it. So it's very refreshing to hear that kind of stuff. So Girls in the Hood by Meg Thee Stallion does not change on that content at all. It's very normal Meg, hot girl content. There are some funny parts in it, like some of the lines are very funny, as Meg does. She's a very good rapper. She's a lot of talent, and I think she seems like a very, like, I'll say, down to earth person, at least in like all the content, in terms of the songs I've heard from her, in terms of the videos and like the interviews I've heard from her so far. She seems very down to earth, and she seems like she doesn't take herself very seriously as an act, not necessarily as a rapper, because she does really put her rapping skills on display a lot of times, but her content is very fun and it's very her. She doesn't really try to be anyone but herself. So there's some very funny lines in here that aren't the hardest in the world or aren't very like serious, but it makes the song a lot better for me because I can like listen to it and laugh and actually enjoy the song for what it is. It's just music. It's fun to listen to. And there's like a as again there's one big anime reference in there. I think it's a Naruto reference. Again, I'm not super big on anime. Some of my friends are, but I didn't really understand the reference too much. But if you're if you're into anime, you might get the reference. So look out for that. And then there's of course, in like every other Meg song, there's like a what I call a no weak dick line, which is basically like, yo, if dude is an XYZ, then like he can't come by me. If like, and that she didn't say that's my own bar, so she can take that. If she ever listens to this, she can take that bar if she wants it. But yeah, so there are some lines in there which again are very fun to listen to because it's very like it's like Men Ain't Shit. That narrative is kind of played out on like social media a lot, but at least in terms of hearing this very, very, very culturally powerful woman just yell into my ear over this hard ass beat, it's so fun to listen to. I love it. Speaking of the beat, I should have led with this, but I kind of forgot. Well, I didn't forget, but I kind of skimmed over it. Girls in the Hood, if you recognize it off the title alone, is an homage to Boys in the Hood by Eazy-E. It uses the exact same instrumental, basically unchanged. The instrumental itself, it might be pitched slightly differently, but it's the exact same like piano keys that Eazy-E used. The only difference is they added I talked earlier about instrumentals or parts, additions to instrumentals that really lure me in terms of songs. In terms of hip hop, a goddamn cowbell or kettlebell will always get me. I don't care what you could be saying. If I hear the drums and I hear that damn cowbell, whatever the hell it's called, I am locked. I am hooked. And she's from Houston, and that's a very Houston thing that producers do. Like down south producers use that cowbell a lot. So, half of her, she has me locked in on her music for life if she keeps sticking to the Houston sound. But she added, again, going back to it, so it's the same Boys in the Hood instrumental, just with some added cowbell, and then a fuck ton more bass, like a lot more bass, which makes it hit a lot harder to an instrumental that hit hard anyway. But it's very it's very, the sound now favors a lot of bass, so she kind of modernized it, to say the least. And again, it's not a, I won't say it's, if you're looking for introspection, if you're like a, Kendrick's the GOAT kind of rapper, or listener, if you're looking for like deep hip hop, you're probably not listening to Meg Thee Stallion anyway, but this doesn't change on that. Check it out if you like her kind of music, or you like music like that. Because it's very fun to listen to, but if you're not into like that kind of music, just stay away. But I would recommend it. It probably won't make it onto my favorite songs of the year, but it's definitely a song that I'm going to enjoy listening to, at least until it runs out of that novelty. And then the second song and the last thing I'll talk about today is the What's Poppin' remix by Jack Harlow. So I was very not in the know onto who Jack. I saw his name come up in conversation a lot in a lot of music circles. Anyone who doesn't know, he's a white rapper from I don't know where the hell. I don't know very much about him, but that's all. That's kind of the novelty that rides off of he's a white rapper. That he's very good. He's very talented from what I've heard so far. And this is his. Definitely, it's confirmed now that this is his breakout single, "What's Poppin'," and oddly enough, so I heard the original What's Poppin', it was good, right? The instrumental's good, the beat's good, his rapping is good. I was like, alright, it's a breakout single, cool, whatever. He'll probably ride this wave a little bit, probably put out an album sometime soon, or another single sometime soon, with it's the same, new rapper, new artist cycle. Like, you have one breakout single, and then you have a breakout project, and then you just grab, like, the most prominent rapper or artist in your lane, or like artists in like if you're a rapper, you can grab like an R&B girl. If you're an R&B girl, you grab like a rapper or whatever, just someone who compliments you, and you pull like the most like relevant artist at the time, and you put them on a song, and then boom, you go from 0 to 50 to like 1,000 in terms of like cultural relevance. So, I heard What's Poppin'. I was like, all right, this song's good. I can see what it's doing. It's exchanging a lot of hands. A lot of people are hearing it. He's definitely gonna grab some people and, make a whole new song with someone prominent, right? Whatever. I don't know who, but someone. And then all of a sudden, he releases this remix, I believe on Wednesday, and it features. Okay, so it features DaBaby, Tory Lanez, and Lil Wayne. And I mean, if you're just looking at that feature list, okay, so if you're looking at the song, you've never heard of Jack Harlow, right? But like me, and you're looking at this new song, it's Jack Harlow featuring, and you're just looking at the track, and it's featuring DaBaby, Tory Lanez, Lil Wayne, and you're just like to me, if you're anything like me, I'm looking at that, I'm like, what what are all these people doing here? Like, what are you guys doing literally here? Because to me, this is like the equivalent of giving someone who knows like nothing about like Marvel or DC comics or anything like that, if you give them a list of every superhero in existence that's ever been thought of, and you give them like the sheet of paper with all the names on it, and you put it in front of them, and you said, okay, make me an Avengers team, and they say okay, and then you say, wait, make Hawkeye the leader of that team. In this scenario, Hawkeye would be Jack Harlow. Again, I'm not. That's to me right now. This is probably the equivalent, right? But if you told someone, hey, just throw together a team, I'm saying this to say, he just pulled like the most random rappers together. Like, obviously DaBaby's very prominent now. Tory Lanez is very prominent now. He's grown huge, especially with the Quarantine Radio and his last project. Like, he's been doing crazy stuff lately. And then like, that's fine. Like, I'm cool with DaBaby and Tory Lanez, right? And then he just put Lil Wayne in there, like that's where it throws me, because it's like, I mean, like Lil Wayne's like one of the greatest rappers ever, but at the same time, it's like, does he fit in this? Not really. And you'll listen to like, and it's very easy you'll understand what I say if you listen to the song, because he very easily has the most out of place verse on this album, or on this song. Because it's like, he is such his own sound. You need someone that sounds damn near exactly like him, or like really complimentary to him, like specifically complimentary to him, for him to really shine on a feature. And this song does not do that, especially again if you're looking at DaBaby and Tory Lanez on there. Tory Lanez you could probably swing You could probably swing a feature, him and Lil Wayne working together, maybe just the way Tory sings and the way his voice is, like, edited on songs. You could probably swing that. But, I mean, DaBaby and Tory Lanez both had really good verses this they are very prominent in the sound now, and they use the sound now all the time. And Jack Harlow is using this new sound that, everyone's using. And Lil Wayne is just to me, Lil Wayne just sounds old. Like, when I hear Lil Wayne's voice, it's like, I feel like I'm in middle school again. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm like 15. I'm like 10, 15 years younger, or however younger. I just feel old. Like, he doesn't sound like he should be. Personally, I don't like hearing Lil Wayne on, like, or with, like, newer artists if they're not specifically complimentary to his style. Like, the Carter 5, I had mixed feelings on because it's Lil Wayne, so it's great, but at the same time, it's dated as hell. And the only newer artist on that album that I can remember is Kendrick Lamar, and that song was so, like, story driven and, like, so monumental of a song. It didn't even, like, really matter that Kendrick is very much like an older rapper, or a quote unquote newer rapper in comparison to Lil Wayne, but the rest of the features were, like, older acts that, like, Lil Wayne would have worked with when he was, at the top of the game. So it's weird to hear him now with 3 essentially brand new artists that are using a brand new sound. It just sounds weird. But all that to say that the song is fun. Like, the instrumentals, like I said, the instrumental is really good. If you know who Jack Harlow is, and you haven't heard the song, listen to it. If you like, it's very, the beat itself was very, like, playful and very bouncy, which again is why DaBaby and Tory Lanez sound really good on it. Which is again why Lil Wayne, I would not have pegged Lil Wayne to be on this. I'm still not sure why he is, and it's kind of irritating me. I don't know why. Maybe he just maybe Jack just wanted like a certified great in there for something, or maybe they'll label it. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But it's really, it's fun. It's very good. It'll probably go on my favorite singles of this year. It's up there. It's really good. It's just, I'm cutting it after that Lil Wayne verse though. So yeah, those are that's all the music I wanted to talk about today. In terms of new music, check it out if any of it sounds interesting to you. And yeah, so again, like this New Music Monday, I'll be doing this every Monday. I'll be talking about all the new music that comes out the Friday before. And yeah, check back for if you want someone to, like, kind of pick through new music, and kind of pick out the good stuff, or at least things that I think are good, and then relay it back to you. Come back every Monday and check it out. Also, quick side note before I leave you guys. I was on Twitter earlier, again, as I always am, and I realized, or I saw a tweet that said that today is the 2-year anniversary of Drake's album Scorpion, and the only thing I will say about that album is that it had both a Michael Jackson, like the Michael Jackson, like not like the Michael Jackson, like the king of pop Michael Jackson, and a Jay-Z feature on that album, right? On separate songs, mind you, but like Jay-Z, the greatest rapper ever, and Michael Jackson, one of the greatest artists ever, and debatably the greatest pop star ever. He had that on his album, right? On this album that came out 2 years ago. And nobody fucking cared at all. Like, nobody cared. I remember reading that track list. I was like, holy shit, there's a Michael Jackson feature? Why? And then I heard it, and I was like, oh. And then everyone else heard it, and they went, oh. And then they kept dancing outside their car to fucking Kiki, Do You Love Me? And the world just continued living on as shitty as it was before. But yeah, everyone have a good day. I will see you on Thursday.